All right. With that said, welcome to our master series, Next Gen Site Selection FAM Tour Hacks. I'm Eric Klein-Sorge, Chairman and CEO of GSLI, and we've got some great guests on today. But before we get started, Brooke, I'm going to have you take over, and once you talk about what we're going to talk about today, keep in mind, everybody, FAM tours are going to be massive in 2023 and kind of went through a transition year with the pandemic, with travel being put at a halt, and corporate site locators and companies. We're seeing a big rise in terms of the request to go personally visit, get feet on the ground, and visit communities that they're looking at, considering. With all the opportunities there, we've been getting a lot of questions and feedback from communities asking for help, and we thought this was a perfect opportunity for this master series. So, Brooke, if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So on today's agenda, we're going to be talking through a few things. You're going to get a chance to meet the GSLI team, a few of the team members, including Eric and I, and then we are going to go through speaker intros and then get the conversation started about FAM tours. We got a lot of good content for you guys today, and we're really excited. We spent a lot of time putting it together, and so we're excited to have a conversation. And yes, first poll that we want to throw out there for anyone who's been on a Master Series webinar before, let us know. Have you been on one before? Is this your first one? We love to just see the experience of our attendees with our Master Series. All right, we'll leave that up for a second. And then Eric, feel free to go to the next slide. Okay, so for those of you who have not met GSLI before, we solve site location challenges from two perspectives. We've been in the industry for about 25 years doing site location and economic development consulting. So we help companies identify their next site location for a capital investment project. We work very closely with companies and communities to help bridge the gap in information sharing and collaboration to help find the most optimal solutions for growing companies. So at the end of the day, we help create jobs. That is our most important focus. We have a wide network of GSLI elite cities that we collaborate with to be able to present new opportunities for sites and workforce and incentives to growing companies. So we have a lot of those members on the call. So welcome you guys. We're glad to see you on the call today. So we're going to go ahead and meet our speakers. Obviously, Eric introduced himself. He's the CEO and chairman. He established GSLI in 96?
94. I hate
94.
to admit it, 94.
And so that has been our mission, to create jobs since then. And we've collaborated today with Mike Grella with Grella Partnership Strategies. He's the Chief Executive Officer. Many of you know Mike. He attends IEDC events. He is a well-known speaker. He previously came from Amazon and the executive team for economic development. And we are just so pleased to have him as a partner. And so just a little context to why we're joining forces together. So we're collaborating today because we've had numerous conversations on our FAM tour and site selection experiences. We just realized over time, and after attending several of the same FAM tours over the past few years, that as we started talking and discussing our individual and say collective 50 plus years of experiences, that we have come to an agreement on a lot of shared thoughts and some synergies in the way that we want to bring value to this conversation. And we just believe that there is a lot of value in terms of benefits and discussion that we can present today to just help us rethink FAM tours. And we're really excited just to share this information with you. So thank you to those who joined us. All right. Just a quick note, stick around to the end. We have just a really easy way to win $25, and this is going to be just an Amazon card. So we hope you can stay until the very end and see what that means. Okay, so before we get started, I know, Eric, we want to put up a poll before we get into more of the meat of the webinar here. First thing, have you ever hosted a FAM tour in your community? We want to know, what does this look like? Yes, multiple times, maybe one time. No, you have just considered hosting them, or no, you're not really interested and it's never been an interest, but maybe that'll change today. Second follow-up question to that, are you currently planning on hosting a FAM tour in 2023? Yes or no? So what we're going to talk through just as this initial first slide is really the framework of FAM tours. So this is kind of just the setting the scene, setting the table, or as Mike had put it, the ingredients to the cake of what's going to be included in the FAM tour mix. So it starts off with our who should be invited? Who are these attendees? And from what communities, or excuse me, who from the community should actually be included on the webinar? So these are your who elements. Next is the what. What does an ideal itinerary look like? What do you actually have to include in your schedule to really maximize that time with your attendees and your stakeholders who are joining you for this visit? The when is the best time of year to plan a FAM tour? You know, are there better times? Are there things you have to consider with the attendee schedule? Are there events going on in your community that you would love to have people come share in on those experiences with you? And when should invites be sent out? You know, are you thinking 30 days in advance, 60 days in advance, 4 months in advance? Those are things to consider.
Yeah, Brooke, one thing on this poll was kind of interesting. We've got 70% of the audience who have had multiple FAM tours. We've got 13% who have at least or have done it one time. And then we've got 20% who haven't done them and are considering. So as a listener, you can kind of gauge what's happening on around the country based on your peers and what they're doing.
That's great. Okay, and then where to host the FAM tour. So really just considering your venues, your restaurants, your hotels, all the different venues that you're going to have an experience with your attendee. And then also the how long should a FAM tour last? Are we talking 5 days, 3 days, a day and a half? Also, what's the funding look like? What's the budget look like? And also, can you really focus on the feedback and the follow-up after the fact? That's just as important as actually hosting those attendees there. What's the feedback that you're going to receive to help improve your experience the next go around? So one of the most critical and important focuses is the attendee. So I would just want to park ourselves here for a little bit. As we consider all of the site selection consultants, commercial and industrial brokers, real estate developers in the world, we really want to consider 2 questions. Why do you want this individual to visit? So that's number 1. And then what do you want them to kind of focus on? Like, why would they want to come to your community? What is it that they're going to get out of it? So this was just our kind of framework of things to think through. And Mike and Eric, you guys can chime in as we talk through some of these. But we kind of laugh because it's like, is the sole purpose to get them to go to a golf outing, to watch a basketball game, or are there actually clearly defined business objectives that are taking place alongside maybe a fun opportunity and activity that they can get to know your quality of life?
Yeah,
So
Mike,
maybe Mike, you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, Mike, as I said, this would be a perfect opportunity because I've seen your Rolodex and your Black Book. It's pretty extensive with your stint with Amazon. So when you're going through that, you mentioned to us, you know, you can only ask Mr. Amazon once or twice a year. So you got to be very picky in picking the right FAM tours for them to go on. But how do you really take a look at your personal Rolodex and a community's matches to say, hey, here's how we can go about getting the right feet on the ground to visit your community?
Sure. Great question, Eric. So look at it from a couple of perspectives. In terms of when I've worked with communities and helped plan FAM tours and reaching out to folks that I know, particularly in the tech community, clean tech, advanced manufacturing, et cetera, cloud computing. A lot of them are based on the West Coast and Pacific Northwest. And so we look at time commitment and what they're, and where the FAM tour is occurring. And so from a community perspective, you have to look at it from how much time am I asking from the attendees? And that goes from the moment that they leave home to go to the airport to the moment that they return back home or work. So if you are in a major top 20 metro area with an international airport and you're within a 45-minute drive time of that airport, you may be able to schedule a FAM tour that has more content and substance. If you're in a more rural community where there's a longer drive, or you're in a community where it's most likely decision makers are going to be coming in and need to connect on a flight, then you might want to have a more compact schedule. And so you want to be mindful of what type of bandwidth you're going to be requiring from the attendees, and also curating your list accordingly. When I've worked with communities in the Dallas metro area, you wanted to have that mix of site consultants from around the country, but you also wanted to get quality people that have national projects like yourselves. You represent clients all over the country. You're based in Dallas, so you don't necessarily need to get a site location consultant to come from New Jersey or Greenville, South Carolina to come, if you can get folks to come locally or from within the region. So that's a big part of it. The other part is understanding the anchor institutions and the assets and what the narrative is before you extend those invitations, because you're putting your reputation on the line as a FAM tour planner or somebody who's trying to play matchmaker, that you're not going to send them out or ask them to come to a tour where afterwards they're going to say, there's no sites here, or they don't have the labor. This was not a good use of my time. And so having the right data, being able to contextualize that data and align the priorities of the individual attendees as well as the industries that they represent. Is there alignment? Do you see a clear path to a potential project taking place? And I would say, in the current environment, advanced manufacturing, the passage of the CHIPS bill, the ubiquity of cloud computing, Industry 4.0, robotics, Internet of Things, that anything that is tech intensive and EV charging, battery, et cetera, if your community has those assets to attract that type of project and have that infrastructure in place, then you absolutely, those are the type of attendees that you're going to want to get to attend.
How many times do you hear? I've been on dozens over the years of these tours, and it always seems like an awkward question, but kind of an important one, because time commitment now with quality of life and everything like that is, can I bring a +1? Yeah, how important, or how many times do you get asked that whenever you reach out to try to get someone of high value to attend one of these? And you actually had a personal experience with one.
I did. I actually had an event for a FAM tour earlier this year that having a +1 actually made a difference being able to attend, particularly because it was Mother's Day. And when I met the other people at the event and they had brought their +1s, they had said, yeah, if it wasn't Mother's Day, it wouldn't have been an issue, but you don't make me have to choose. And so I would say
not go over well.
yeah, well, exactly. And it also depends on what the event is. So for example, if it's a hunting or a fishing trip, and that's sort of the anchor, or a certain type of event where it might not be as likely that the +1 is going to want to attend, that makes a difference as well. So you think about how you're planning out your criteria, what the requirement is going to be from a travel perspective, and what days of the week are you planning it. In some cases, FAM tours bleed into a weekend. They start on most of them are during the week, but some of them have an anchor event, particularly sporting events or entertainment events that might occur on a weekend. So definitely want to be mindful of that. And it's certainly great to be in a position to have that budget. But I would say if you are budget constrained, you obviously would rather have that budget allocated to having potentially 2x as many attendees rather than having half as many and then bringing a +1.
Yeah, and one thing that I've seen also might depend on the type of guest. If it's a corporate site locator versus an actual project,
Right.
If it's an actual project, you might want to have the wife there or the significant other so that they feel compelled to, those conversations go behind the scenes and helping them feel comfortable in a potential place they're going to move. Really critical also.
Correct. Yep. Agree.
And Eric, I wanted to touch on just the attendee component about specializing in certain industries. So, if there's a target industry that you guys are looking to attract in, there are obviously, as you might know, certain site selectors, developers that focus solely on that type of industry. So being able to really know the right individuals, finding clusters of specific industries that maybe a certain individual or multiple multiple consultants work, then you'd be able to make sure that you're targeting the right individual to invite onto that FAM tour. So it's just multiple things that you have to consider with target industry, future opportunities for a specific industry, or certain industries that this one individual or group of individuals focuses on as a site selection consultant.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I would say that the industry focus should really be based upon what the data is telling you and what the infrastructure and labor quantity and quality is. We're in a highly constrained labor market, notwithstanding the inflationary pressures and risks of a recession. A lot of communities have record employment right now. And so they don't necessarily have the ability, or they might not have the power to attract a chip manufacturing site that requires 2,000 jobs and a half a gig of power. But a lot of communities are well connected where they might have 20 megawatts of power and they've got 3% unemployment, but they do have quality educational institutions. That's perfect for a data center. So you can invite your Oracles, your AWS, your Microsoft, Google, Meta, et cetera. And those are the folks that you would want to attend. If you've got a higher unemployment level and you've got available sites, you've got former automobile plants or industrial plants, those are great multi-use facilities that can be used for manufacturers and other types of applications. So certainly everyone has their wish list of the type of project that they want to attract, but you also want to be mindful of whether or not your assets and your demographics and your current profile aligns with the type of industries and people you want to attract. One last comment though, it's just as important who you don't invite as who you do. And at the risk of this sounding a little coarse, there are some folks out there that are professional FAM tour attendees. Some of you that are signed in may know them. I've run into Brooke a couple of times, but over a period of years, neither of I are professional attendees, but there are some folks where I've gone on tours going back 15, 20 years and they're still, and they go to everything. They go, I'll go to a ball game in New York and they're there, and people might say, well, you're there too, but I only go on a couple of these things a year. So you want to make sure if people are, you almost want to have this, what I call the FAM tour site selector dilemma, is you want to invite the people who are too busy to attend because they have that many projects going on. If you've got people attending your FAM tour that are available 365 days a year, they're probably not the people you want to invite.
Great point. I want to also bring up, guys, if you're out there and you have a question, this is meant to be interactive. So there is a Q&A button down at the bottom. Simply ask your question as we go along. We know what we're going to cover. And if we feel it's a perfect time to answer the question, we'll do it during this webinar.
Yes, we love questions, so please throw them in. Also, I do want to kind of note on, we have a lot of information being thrown at you today, and we know that. And so we're kind of doing a high-level overview of all of this, and we know that there's going to be additional questions that pop up along the way. So if they do pop up, throw them in the Q&A, but also we will gladly kind of explain towards the end of the webinar how we can help provide additional resources or support with those types of questions. Okay, so Mike, this is something that you and I we were thinking we'd go back and forth on, because as we all know, there is a traditional FAM tour framework, one that we know well, other site locators know well, brokers, developers, and even the communities, as they kind of sometimes cut and paste, if you will, FAM tour experience from one year to another, or from one FAM tour to 6 FAM tours that year that they're conducting. So we just want to help kind of explain, what does a next generation FAM tour look like compared to something that's more traditional. Traditional doesn't mean bad, and it doesn't mean that it's perfect. It just means that there's kind of a framework that a lot of communities do utilize in their thinking for planning the FAM tour. So
Sure.
I thought we'd start with one. So the tour is designed to satisfy local stakeholders, investors, ED board members. So all the key people in the community, it's kind of more geared to them and making sure that they are happy and satisfied with everything that's expressed on the FAM tour, all the information shared, kind of the key things that are touted on that tour. So what does the next gen FAM tour look like in terms of, satisfying that?
Yeah, I would say that you could combine bullet 1 and 2 in that from that perspective, they want to see warm bodies. And so you could have 8 people coming on a FAM tour, and from the view of a local mayor, city council, or the investors or board of directors, they go, that's fabulous, we got 8 people coming. And FAM tours are a means to an end. They're not the end in itself. And what's really important, and I'd say what is sort of the best practice for next gen FAM tour, is really doing that stakeholder education internally in the community ahead of time. If you are being inside, and this is kind of goes towards some of the bullets we're going to discuss later, but you want to come up with KPIs that local stakeholders understand is the right way to measure success. And the right way to measure success is to take a medium to long-term view that these are planting seeds for the future, and that you're bringing in the right people, you're curating the attendee list, you're not wasting taxpayer dollars on having people come in that don't have projects. And I would say, for example, be mindful of the difference between a true site selector and somebody who's an economic development consultant. I've been on a couple of FAM tours where I've spoken to people. I said, what do you do? And they do WOTC credits, and they do job tax credits, or they negotiate incentives. But I know that they negotiate incentives after somebody's already finalized their 2 locations. They bring the person in and they try to get as much money as possible. So they're really not involved in the decision. They're involved in essentially putting together the package. And so knowing the community assets don't really mean anything, which makes me scratch my head of why these people are there. But that's something you need to be mindful of. So being able to communicate and convey internally quality, exposure, amount of media impressions, things like that, and the type of projects that you want to attract are really, really important, rather than looking at this as a check the box exercise.
One of the key things that I think we've always just expressed is data points and data analytics that come into play with a FAM tour. So I'm talking on point 3 here. Sometimes few information is provided to attendees in advance, but other times it's not. So why should there be such a heavy focus on leveraging data analytics to tell the story in advance, during the tour? What does that look like from just your perspective?
Yeah, I would say using data analytics to promote the FAM tour and also while you're on the tour are extremely important. And so every community's got strengths and weaknesses. You've done your SWOT analysis, but what you don't know is when the phone doesn't ring or you haven't won the project. 99% of the time, you don't get feedback. You don't necessarily know why. So if you have those weak points and those Achilles heels related to crime rate, population growth is a big one, that your population is stagnant, educational outcomes, broadband connectivity, health outcomes, more comorbidity rates, et cetera. There may be data that's not favorable, but when you do a deep dive data analytics, you can see, so peel away the layers of the onion and see, well, this is trending in the right direction. Our population was declining, but the rate of decline has gone down, and it's gone down because we have focused on making this a great place for families. We have got new housing that's going up. We have a new health clinic that opened up, and we've got a mobile health truck that drives around the community that focuses on serving minority and underserved and impoverished populations. That doesn't come through in the data. We've got a new magnet school, and we've got a program where business owners are volunteering time and resources to mentor children in schools. These are great points to communicate. And so you need to be able to contextualize your data and tell a story with data. And if you're just relying on somebody who's going to look at Statebook or MZ data, they're going to say, oh, these numbers don't look great. I don't know if this is worth my time, or I don't know if I can bring my client there. So being able to do that type of analytics and then tell that story and say, let me help you peek behind the veil of what this data is and what we're doing about it to improve those outcomes, can really make a big difference, because people are looking around corners about not where they want to be today, but where do they want to be 2, 3, 5, 10 years from now? And the arbitrage is when your community is turning that corner and growing and improving these outcomes. That's where you find the opportunity to get folks to really focus and give you a second look, is when you can tell that story about how the data doesn't necessarily convey reality.
So in terms of timing, whenever we talked about this with the attendees, you know, there might be bad times of the year, or it's scheduled around just the local stakeholder availability without really keeping in mind your attendees busy. They have multiple projects they're working, multiple tours they have to go on. They're flying out to see their clients. So how does the next gen compare to a focus just on, let's just do a tour at this time of the year and not really consider the factors that go into it?
Right. Traditional FAM tours in next gen, you're obviously going to look at things like school calendars and time of year in terms of climate, but understanding things like, when is planning and budgeting for the next fiscal year? Is it a July 1st fiscal year, or a calendar and business where your decision makers are going to be heads down? I know that for some of the big tech companies, September, October, they're coming up with their budget for next year and their priorities, and they are heads down with strategic planning. You've got certain industries where they've got busy seasons and they're going to be closing their books. And, you know, for example, with Amazon and some of the e-commerce folks, you want to attract, whether it be, you know, a data center or a e-commerce logistics facility, et cetera. They've got busy seasons around the holidays or around certain times of the year. You want to be mindful of what that looks like. And so understanding sort of what are the pain points for attendees, being mindful of that is super important. And also know when the stakeholders are available. But at the end of the day, you really want to find that alignment or that overlap in the Venn diagram.
So point 5, generating limited media exposure. I think when we think about that, it's really just, you know, not a lot of people, stakeholders know that that's happening, that the FAM tour is happening. Maybe in advance, the attendees haven't been prepped to post on social media, share their excitement about attending that FAM tour, and just kind of create this buildup of press and PR around the community. So that's one of the big differences with next gen.
Yeah, I worked with a community in Northeast Texas that just absolutely crushed it with the social and digital media. We had a videographer that came along the whole time. There was great exposure beforehand. There were real-time posts on social media about events that were taking place. Hey, look at us, you know, we just caught a big fish, or we just went golfing, and this is while it's happening. So after the tour's over, it's great to have a video that you can send to folks. You put it on your YouTube channel, your Instagram, and all your social channels. But to be able to capture that content in real time, have the right hashtags and promote it, you really get that excitement. And then you also have your attendees leverage social media. Mm-hmm. So I've actually talked to folks and said, hey, are you on social media? These are attendees. And they're like, no, I'm not. I'm like, hey, you know, I'm on LinkedIn. All right, well, I want you to post what we're doing on LinkedIn, and I want you to do it now. And so attendees might not be thinking that, but they've got their own network of people. So if you've got somebody from a big manufacturing or tech company, a lot of their contacts are going to be in the same industry. And so if you want something to, you know, call it go viral, you don't want to just be the EDO or the Chamber of Commerce who's promoting this. You want your attendees who's the VP of real estate or director of site selection or the C-suite to be saying, I'm so happy, you know, I'm so thankful to be hosted by this community, and I had a great time at X. That third-party real-time validation is priceless in terms of earned media.
Yeah, I think it's a good point to also bring up. It's a perfect opportunity to invite your local media, your local newspapers, your local news station, your regional papers, your business books, getting that free press about what you're doing, educate your local citizens also. And it really builds up and shows that you have a true interest in building the economy within those communities.
Yeah, great point, Eric. I spoke at a at a Chamber of Commerce event in Texas a couple of years ago, and they invited the local networks. And so the ABC, NBC, and Fox affiliate all showed up for my speech, and the CEO of the EDC was there, the mayor was there, and we were on the nightly news on 3 of the 4 networks. So you're absolutely right.
It's perfect.
And I see a good question that just came across. Should we always involve media? And
well,
the answer is,
if you plan it right, yes.
Yes. Yeah. The answer, if you plan it right, if you can get all of the ducks in order, is yes.
Yeah. I also see a question a few minutes ago about how much dollars are we looking at spending for travel? I would say that look at it from the budget perspective of what you can afford, and then focus on quality over quantity. So if you've got a limited budget and you can only afford to bring in 2 or 3 people, you do it well. And there's ways of you don't want to invite the people that insist on being bougie and say, I need to fly first class and I need to be picked up in a limo. Look, everyone can fly coach, and they can get an Uber from the airport, or you can pick them up. And really there's a way to make almost any type of budget work. It's just, and there's hacks around that in terms of venue space and the type of meals, and having a good amount of sort of high-end experiences, but also it's not about how much money you spend. It's about quality of experiences, and unique experiences can many times be free or inexpensive. So we'd be happy to talk about that offline.
Mike, I think this is really critical. And at this point, if I could educate all boards around the nation, there's so many times we'll come across a project, an actual project, and it relates to fam tours also. And we ask, hey, can we control his experience? Can you get him a plane ticket? And for whatever reason, the board or someone turns that down, says, no, we don't have budgets for that kind of travel. Yet they turn around and go spend thousands of dollars on marketing and advertising, trying to find a prospect, yet spending $350 to bring and put that prospect's feet on the ground. So I think constant education of the importance of having people there versus chasing them in the media and chasing them in advertising and marketing should be really a priority. And that really applies to these fam tours also when you're trying to build that experience.
Yeah, agreed. We're going to cover the last few points on the next slide, so maybe we move on.
I was going to say, just for sake of time, we got to keep moving. All right, so we kind of laugh at this, fam tour fails, because we all know that they exist, that they're out there, they've happened, and we've been on some. So I know Eric and Mike can definitely speak to some fam tour fails that they have both experienced over the course of, combined 50 years of doing these. And it just kind of makes you scratch your head sometimes about some moments that just are like, really? That's what happened? That's what we chose to do? So I was going to let you guys kind of speak to some of those.
And if you in the audience have experienced one, go ahead and throw it in the chat box. We will not embarrass you. Those are all learning experiences for everybody.
And you could be
anonymous.
You could be anonymous attendee.
Yes.
Anonymous attendee. Fam tour fails. Absolutely.
We won't know it's you, that you had the bad fam tour fail, or you've been on one. But we kind of we'd love to hear some of your opinions on that. So there's some experiences.
Yeah, but to talk to some of these transportation experience, Brooke and Mike, I think you guys have experienced, or Mike, I know you have. You shared one with me. Talk about that, the transportation experience.
Yeah, so I ended up not going on the fam tour, but I got invited on a fam tour that in theory sounded great. I initially said yes, and then afterwards they said, well, we didn't really book the hotels in advance. There was an anchor event, a sporting event. And they said, so your hotel is going to be 75 miles away from the event, and you're going to have to rent your own car and figure out how to get there. But once you get there, we've got a shuttle that'll take you straight from the parking lot to the event.
Oh, thank you for the shuttle.
I was like, that's great. So I'm not even going to be staying. I'm not even going to be staying in your community. I'm going to be staying 75 miles away because all the hotels were booked. So that was a fam tour fail.
Yeah, number 2, who guests interact with. I want you to think outside the box, not just who they're spending the day with. Like, are they competing organizations of corporate site location? Are they competing businesses? But who can they interact with in the city? When they check into the hotel, when they get into their cab. I checked into a hotel and I could not stop the person talking about how fast he and his family could get out of that town, and talking about the problems, and really set the tone for the rest of my experience there, because I was looking for all these problems the rest of the tour. Going to a waiter that really was just not informed about that these were out of town guests trying to make a good impression, and trying to seal that off ahead of time by what you'll talk about in a minute, Mike, is the dry run. Educate those people to make a first class experience for those people, so they know you know what you're doing when prepping and trying to build an experience for them. Because I believe you're ultimately building trust for that corporate site locator. If not on this project, in another project that they get, do I trust that that community is going to treat my project right and make me look good when I'm trying to finalize a site location decision for them? Or is that community going to embarrass me, and is he going to experience the same trials and tribulations that I experienced on that FAM tour? The final thing on that guess, I had a company that was doing development, and they made it a point to stay overnight outside of the FAM tour on their own dime, and they would go to the local restaurants, and they would sit there and talk to the local citizens and really get their feedback also. And that's really something you can't control outside of that, but it's something you have to think about when you're trying to build your experience with your citizens. Are they good stewards of the community? Are you addressing their problems, or are those problems festering? And that goes back into business retention.
Yeah. And who guests interact with, we don't have if this was a 7-hour webinar, we might have enough time to talk about this, but yeah, I was on a FAM tour once. It was the opening dinner, and the waiter's like, said to the waiter, "Oh, how do you like it here?" And he said, "Well, I like working here, but I'm dropping out of high school." I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because the schools suck here." And I saw him in the bathroom later, and I was like, "Do they really suck?" He's like, "Oh, I can't stand it." He's like, "I'll probably end up working here full time."
Oh my gosh.
I was like, "Good luck with that." And I'm just like, this is not a good, you keep an open mind, and things happen, but obviously, these are opportunities for you to speak to the folks that run the restaurant and have them speak to their staff ahead of time, et cetera. I would just say one other thing, and this is the opposite end of the spectrum, but also a fail, was I had worked with a community that had a CEO forum, and they had a half dozen of the biggest CEOs in the area, and they were talking about how great the community was, and it was excellent, great, great schools, great quality of life, expanding like crazy, lots of investment in infrastructure. And then one CEO said, "Yeah, as long as you don't need a permit, if you're going to do an expansion, this is a great place to do business." And then everyone's like, what do you mean? Like, "Oh, you just can't get a permit here to save your life." It's just like, so everything that you had just talked about for the last hour and a half, that you had literally nailed it. It should have been like, pull the George Costanza. You want to end on a high note. It's like this should have ended 5 minutes ago. And then everyone's like, "So if I have an expansion project, I'm not going to be able to get a permit?" Nope. So those are the things you want to be mindful of. Absolutely. These are the rest of them, I think, are relatively self-explanatory.
Yeah,
And,
three's really obvious, but I want to make a point. Weather, because that was probably one of my biggest experiences. I was invited on a fishing tour, and so excited about going on the fishing tour, was welcoming the warm weather. They had a cold front come in and a rainstorm. So by 7:30 in the morning, we were in the middle of the lake with rain, no raincoats, no rain gear. Just think a little bit ahead. If you know something's coming, spend the extra dollar, provide some raincoats, remember, they're going to take away that experience. I took it away as some funny memories, but it was something that kind of put a little damper on what could have been an amazing experience.
Yeah. And to that point, Eric, there was even a high profile elected official that was scheduled to be at one of the FAM tours I was at, and didn't show up. And so that was just one of those moments where you're like, man, I was really looking forward to that. That was an important meeting. So the attendees were pretty bummed when that happened, because it's just a nature of the game,
Yeah, we've got a bunch of questions that haven't been answered yet. Do we want to
Yeah.
save them for the end?
Sure, because a lot of them are pretty granular, like asking very specific,
All right, we'll do.
how many
Why
people
don't we
should
do?
invite?
We'll do it. We'll save 5 minutes for a lightning
Yeah.
round
Okay.
when we wrap up.
All right. So funny about the last note, which is it looks like it duplicated the numbers, but it's 0.6. Respect the clock. Let's keep things moving. This is a FamTour fail if we don't do that, but it's also a webinar fail if we don't keep moving.
FamTour webinar fail.
FamTour webinar fail. We don't keep moving. All right. So now let's just say you did the webinar you did the FamTour. So what now? These are three very important comments that we wanted to make just as a group because we know that there's a lot that goes into doing the FamTour, but now what's next? So one of the biggest points is building time into your final session to allow the site selectors to collaborate and discuss feedback with the EDC. This is one of the most critical components of a FamTour to actually get that live feedback while they're there. They have your community on their mind. They have all the information they just took in. They were a sponge. They have all this information that they can then regurgitate back to you, especially if they believe that it's positive and beneficial, or if it's something that you guys can improve, or some notes that you needed to be able to receive to share with your stakeholders to improve for the next, for the ability to grow in the community, or for the next FamTour, certain things they liked and didn't like. So that's a very important time frame to spend with the site selectors in the very last meeting that you want to have with them. Another note, unless Mike, you want to speak to that, is to consider sending a post-FamTour survey. So this is to the attendees once they get home, kind of gives them a second to get back into the routine. And it's key because you're going to get that feedback that's critical to the strengths and weaknesses on the area, any recommendations that they also believe could help improve your capabilities of doing business expansion, retention efforts, and also just general FamTour experiences. So kind of reiterates that first point of you can talk with them. You might get a kind of limited version of their opinion, but you might also get more opinion, more feedback through a more, laxed type of survey after the fact.
And I'd say also don't be too shy. You could also ask those surveys right there with them. You've got their captive experience. Find out, exactly how they felt. And then on that post tour survey, say, hey, it's been 2 or 3 weeks. What do you remember? And what were the takeaways now that you're away? The most important question that I saw asked in one of the FamTours is, hey, it was a group of 10 corporate site locators that worked for major real estate firms, and they were representing several projects, and they just asked, let's take 5 minutes just to think about what projects you're working or some of your peers are working that would align with what we have. Can you guys give us a list of those? And they walked away with 5 names of companies because they simply asked. So don't be afraid to ask. You've made an investment of their time. They're going to respect that when they're there. Go ahead and ask them those surveys, and go ahead and ask them those pointed questions. They're going to make your overall return on investment of the FamTour worth it.
All right, Eric, we'll push us on to the next slide here. So this is kind of our way of showcasing the value of basically a do-it-yourself type FamTour and what it looks like to have someone as a guide, to have a consultant who is going to be able to take you through the entire FamTour process to really just make it epic, make it something that, like these little emoji show, is a positive experience, a long-lasting experience with those attendees. So Mike, we can kind of talk through these a little bit. I'll go through the FamTour DIY, but unexpected and controllable variables could arise on your own FamTour. Maybe poor decisions could possibly be made without just having a unbiased third-party consultant or just an organization to review those decisions in advance. The itinerary that you have in place might not have had a second opinion to it. So that means that locations or stakeholders or activities could potentially sabotage the experience of your attendee. And then also unnecessary information could potentially overwhelm the attendee. But these are all things that you wouldn't know if you wouldn't have had like a third party opinion on that entire process. And I'll let Mike kind of talk more about the Sherpa guide.
Yeah. And again, you can absolutely have a 5-star DIY FamTour.
100%.
There's no reason to believe that you all, if you're hitting it on all cylinders and it's been successful before, you don't fix what's not broken. But if there's an opportunity to iterate, be in this mode of continuous improvement, the mock fam tours I've found, I think that they're great. They're a lot of fun, and it provides, like the hashtag make mistakes when nobody's watching. That's how you rectify the issues that come up. I've been on fam tours where it started at 6:30 in the morning, and then the dinner went until 11:30 at night. That's a 17-hour day. That's rough. Even if you're having a good time or going to a good event, you don't have the breaks, and folks still have client work. Hopefully they've got clients and they have emails that they need to return, et cetera. So you go through that. And if you're a regional EDO, this is really important. You don't feel the pressure that you have to hit your 12 county region in one day. I've been on those fam tours where it's like, we're going to go to 7 counties today so that we can make 7 counties happy. And it's like, I'm in a car for 400 miles. No, you rotate 1 or 2, you highlight 1 or 2 at a time, and then the next tour you see another 2, et cetera. But you don't go out of your way to please, like we said, to appease the stakeholders at the expense of the customer experience. So being able to get that candid feedback from a third party rather than the EDO, you're saying to your investors, your leaders, saying like, oh, we're not going to bring them to your community. They're going to say, well, I'm not going to fund you next year. So having a third party to explain why you're doing what you're doing is super important. And then being able to go through that type of experience ahead of time and provide that feedback and say, hey, the next time you do this, you might want to talk to that CEO before they make a comment about the permits, or you might want to talk to the restaurant staff, or you might want to make sure that you've buttoned up these specific issues. And having that candid feedback. Sometimes your attendees are not necessarily going to feel comfortable telling you, hey, I had a problem with my hotel room, or I didn't enjoy the tour, or I've got an issue with something that's coming up. They'll tell their peers. So if you're on a tour, Brooke and I have been on tours together, and we'll share open feedback with each other. You want that feedback and not feel like there's sort of this, it's a me versus them. It's like we are all part of the same team here at the end of the day.
Yeah, Mike, you addressed this. It's not only, I've been hired a couple times to be kind of I keep using the word secret shopper, but someone to sit in on the tour, give my own personal evaluation, talk with the attendees and get an honest opinion away from the event, and feed that back and let them know what they did right, what they didn't do right, how could they improve, what do they need to address to earn that person's confidence to push projects to them. And you, Mike, you've conducted them and said it. You were just flat out as a third party, leader of the group. You're able to ask real candidly, hey, we want to know. Well, my job is to get feedback from you guys of what are the pros and cons. And you said you got really honest feedback from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a great experience for everybody. And it was a tremendous amount of value to have that type of candor. And this will answer one of the questions real quick, was like, how do you build rapport with the attendees? In a lot of cases, so for example, when I've reached out to my network of folks, I've had fam tours where 3 or 4 of the attendees were friends of mine. And so that rapport was already established, and you're able to transfer that to the EDO. And they say, well, why would I want to attend this? Because you have to meet these folks. They are so much fun. They are great to hang out with. You like the same music. They've got this great barbecue place, or they're going to take you to this place that has, this craft brewery, et cetera. There's a site that I think that you're going to love that, is not listed on the market right now. It's owned by the EDO, but it's 100 acres and it's got a substation that can deliver 20 megawatts of power. Oh, where do I sign up? So, having that rapport, you can transfer that over, between the community and those that are in your network.
Awesome. So
I think this is probably a good time to do that 5-minute quick, go through these questions. You might want to take a look at this. We are going to be offering free consultations about, we really want to hear from you and learn what you're looking for, what you're planning on doing. And we really want to hear from those that are planning and really considering hiring a consultant. So we can also give you the pros and cons of doing that and what you need to do. But Mike, let's fire through these questions if we could.
Okay. Should your tour facilitator be available for the whole tour? Absolutely. That's what their job is. They're there from the moment that it begins, literally helping people, picking them up at the airport, taking them to where they need to be. Highest and best use of your time is not picking people up and driving them around and necessarily hanging out at the hotel afterwards. I was on a fam tour once where we got back to the hotel and it was like 9:30 and everyone was like, is there a bar around here? I don't want to call it a night. And so, I was like, I will find a bar. And we found a local bar and we hung out until like 1 a.m. and everyone had the best time. So, I think that's absolutely necessary. Should there be tourist activities? 100%. One of the earlier slides, it's about that, the work, live, play balance. Mm-hmm. Like you want to have both. You really want people that are interested in seeing your available sites, that want to understand the quality of your schools, the amenities, the public green space, but they also want to have fun. I've never met somebody that just said, "Oh, I want to just look at industrial sites and a bunch of cornfields for 3 days."
Mike, I thought you had a good idea, because typically when I go on a fam tour, it's built around either the Grand Prix or the College World Series or a balloon festival, and not every community has a big time draw or an event. Most can think of one and most have some type of thing, but you talked about the swag bag at one of the communities that really just said, hey, we really like what they're offering. We're willing to go listen to their story and see what they're doing because they came up with a really cool swag bag.
Yeah, there was one community that we went to, and part of their swag bag that they offered was custom-made chocolates and also specialized cowgirl boots to the folks that attended. And there were people that attended because of it. And it was like, wow, that's really cool. I've never had a pair of cowgirl boots before, or to go on a tour of a chocolate factory. And so it was a relatively low cost in terms of the overall expense of the event, but it generated a disproportionate amount of excitement versus going to a hockey game or a baseball game or some sort of sporting event. It was, again, that unique experience of walking into a boot shop or a chocolate factory and making your own chocolate and picking out your own boots. And so that type of stuff makes a big difference.
It's unique because they had sent that out in advance. So the attendees knew going into it exactly what they would be receiving ahead of time versus kind of just having it be left in the air as to what potential items are going to come, or not that it's necessary, but it was able to push the attendee to want to attend.
Yeah.
Because of those cool swag items.
Yeah. A nice segue to the question about have been able to get the local destination marketing organization, others to provide complimentary discounted services. Absolutely. That's something where you work in tandem with the Chamber of Commerce and the Hospitality Tourism Commission. Sometimes they'll have a stipend or an allowance that they can give and allocate for these types of events. You also might have restaurants that will offer discounts or free wine. You're going to bring 8 people in on a Tuesday night and you're going to have a $1,000 or $2,000 tab. That's something where you can negotiate or will negotiate on behalf of the community. But usually you get quite a few folks to offer in-kind contributions of services or stuff that swag that's discounted. And that certainly allows you to stretch your fam tour budget dollars.
Yeah, and on a side note, there's some stakeholders. Don't discount, because an important part of this is funding and coming up with the right budget to do a proper fam tour. I've been on a fam tour where an attorney donated $75,000 each year because he wanted to make the connections with the companies that were locating there to sell his services. banks, real estate companies, they all can be valuable assets in helping make your fam tour really successful.
Right. Yeah. And you want to almost have a campaign around it. I know, like being at IDC, there's booths of professional EDO fundraisers. You can do fundraisers or a campaign just around these events. And I do think that it's helpful to have a third-party validator to say, well, why would I give a free dinner away? Why would I give away 30% off a pair of cowboy boots, or et cetera, or some other swag? And have somebody else say, look, I've been on these tours and it makes a difference. And you've seen, I've brought projects to communities where I went on the fam tour, and it's created jobs, and it's created additional activity, and has contributed to local Main Street business, et cetera. So yeah, absolutely. What types of transportation should be provided? Nothing fancy. It's just how to get from point A to point B. Again, no stretch limos, no private planes. This is just a matter of putting people in an Uber, or if you're available, getting staff to pick up people from the airport, knowing that some people might be late, but always having a plan B from a logistics standpoint. Somebody missed their flight and you've got a coach bus that's traveling an hour and a half. You got to have a few $100s in a contingency budget that somebody comes in 2 hours late, that you're going to pay for their Uber rather than make everybody wait at the airport for 3 hours. Any other questions, Brooke, that you think we want to highlight before we wrap up?
Yeah, I was just looking.
Group size is a good one. What would you say is a magical group size of managing the expectations and the experience?
Yeah, if you're not a top 20 metro area, if you're a community that is, let's say, under 250,000 or under, I don't think you want to go above 8. I think that is as high as I would go. I would say you can go as low as 2 or 3. And if they're really, really good, I've been on fam tours with 2 other folks where I followed with the EDO afterwards, and they got 2 projects out of it. So it's really quality over quantity. But I would say the sweet spot is somewhere between 3 and 8, with sort of the average being like 5 or 6. 4 to 6 is awesome. It's not too big, it's not too small, it can be intimate, et cetera. But if you've got budget constraints, again, somewhere around that, like 3 to 5 numbers fine.
I like this question. How do you vet potential invitees? So that goes back to crafting the ideal attendee list and considering who is going to be, receiving an invite from the organization. I know we touched on this a little bit, Mike.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
It's a great question, and it's unique to every community.
Yeah, I would absolutely. Yep, I would agree with that.
This last question kind of segues into this slide. If we want to go into that, Brooke, you have something?
No, I was just going to say it's unique to every community, and I feel like we have so much more that we could express on that. But I think that does touch on, having somebody who can work with you individually to make sure that we know who your target industries are, what are your goals with those attendees. Yes. It kind of just wraps up into that whole. You might need a third party to evaluate that.
And frankly, again, at the risk of this sounding self-serving, we know 95% of the consultants in the business, and we know the ones that have real projects and who don't. And so you've got, I've heard some great things about people that go to Site Selectors Guild, and I've talked to folks that are like, I don't know if I got my money's worth. I sponsored the napkin and I didn't get any leads from that $50,000 napkin. Yeah. Or I sponsored the Wi-Fi and all I got was this lousy Wi-Fi. So it's important to know whether or not these folks have real connections and real projects. And that's something where talking to their peers can be very, very helpful.
Yeah, these are great questions, and I know that we can definitely consider these potentially for a future series on fam tours. I know we spitballed that. We have so much content, but for the sake of time, I know Eric just threw up a poll, and based on our note here on the slide, because we are collaborating as 2 organizations. I know we had said that from the beginning, but GSLI, Grella Partnership Strategies, we've collaborated to bring our experience, expertise, wisdom system to help make your fam tour a success story. So in terms of that poll, if you are considering, or are you considering hiring a consultant for your fam tour? It's something that we're just curious to know. And then if you are interested, we are offering a limited to 5 EDOs to have a free consultation. If you are looking to hire a consultant to successfully nail this next fam tour in 2023 and beyond, if you would like one, go ahead and check mark yes. If not, you gotta know. That's the other option.
If you and real quick, if you have just a simple question, you're not necessarily planning a fam tour, feel free to follow up with any of us afterwards if we didn't get to your question and you're not ready to sort of make the jump. Still happy to connect with. We're happy to connect with anyone and everyone to make sure your question's answered.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is important. This is in a chat box if you can. We got 2 opportunities for this. We always want to be bringing information and master series topics that interest you, the economic development community. So if you can, throw it in the chat box. That's your quickest opportunity. We're going to meet later on this week, or you can email brooke@gslisolutions.com, and we're going to pick one of those topics and start building out our 2023 master series schedule. If we choose yours, we're going to thank you with a $25 Amazon cash card. You can go buy a small gift, and we'll take care of you that way, and know that we're fulfilling your needs as an economic development community. Want to give these to you if you want. Screen capture these shots. We will be sending out this slide deck post webinar for you guys to have. But this is Mike's. And Mike, I want to thank you for your time today. Always amazing to meet, talk, and collaborate, and always a wealth of information and knowledge. So thank you. And Mike's contact information is there. These are some of our team members. If you're interested in not just learning about fam tours, but working the over 100 projects that we work in terms of helping them find sites or getting involved with us on helping promote your community, here are some important contacts. Brooke Edwards, she's our project director. Carol Harris and Amanda Tompkins are 2 amazing community assessment directors that work directly with the communities and contacting them to find out if their solutions are right for the projects that we have, and their information is there. With that said, we are 3 minutes over, and I thank everyone. You have very busy days, and I know it takes a long time. It's hard to block out an hour of your schedule, and so we want to thank you for taking time to spend with us today. And we look forward to future Prospect Lives and Master Series webinars. With that said, till next time, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.